Two breaking news stories happening right now. I want to get your take on both. Let's start with Celsius. So a couple of different actions today, both from the SEC and CFTC, but also Mashinsky has now been arrested. Can you kind of set the significance of this for us? I mean, we already knew how a lot of these things were playing out. A lot of talk already about how fraudulent Celsius had been in some of its actions. So help us dissect the news today.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, everyone expected Mashinsky eventually to be arrested, so that was no surprise. I would say probably the biggest surprise for me was the magnitude of the FTC fine that accompanied the announcements this morning. So $4.7 billion is not chump change. I believe that Meta, Facebook, faced a charge of $5 billion for some of their violations in the past, and that was maybe one of the biggest ones ever. So it's kind of that order of magnitude. Just a massive number, and it just means, whatever they are able to return to creditors, there will be less than nothing left, obviously, after facing a fine like that.
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to ask you about. Just, the parallel proceedings in terms of Celsius and bankruptcy court trying to make customers whole again. How does this fine affect that?
The fine is junior to those claims. So whatever gets paid out through bankruptcy courts comes first. And then, if there were somehow any value left, which obviously there won't be, then the fine would just kind of finish filling the grave.
Okay, let's pivot now. So at the same time that this Celsius news is coming in, we also just got a ruling in the SEC Ripple case. What's the significance of this?
Yeah, so in my understanding, this is actually rulings on requests for summary judgment from both sides. So it actually doesn't mean that there won't be full in-court trial litigation of these claims. What was granted, I believe, was the SEC's claim that the Ripple's sales directly to investors constituted the sale of securities. That was granted, so that summary judgment did pass. It looks like there was not a summary judgment passed on programmatic sales of Ripple, of their XRP token owned by Ripple through exchanges, because that was not them selling directly from the company to the investor. It was intermediated by exchanges. So they said that did not warrant a summary judgment in favor of the SEC's position.
Now, in the last half hour, we saw Coinbase and MicroStrategy stock shoot up. So how is the industry reading into this, this document that just came out?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like on first read, they're expecting that the secondary sales may be relatively more in the clear. So when a company isn't directly shilling their securities via ICO or the way that Ripple corporate has marketed and sold Ripple token, XRP, whatever, to investors in direct sales over the years. Maybe once these things are on exchanges, there's some wiggle room there. And so I think that's why the market is hopeful.
Does this have any sort of impact on the regulatory uncertainty that everyone has been talking about? Obviously, Lummis just yesterday resurfaced her bill that, we've been talking about for a while now. What's the significance of this ruling and where regulation is headed in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff is just going to have to get regulated through courts. And so I'd say this kind of supports the thesis that, I guess Gensler and some others have been saying all along, that existing securities law is sufficient to handle digital securities, because walks like a duck, talks like a duck, acts like a duck. It's still the same thing, regardless of whether it's on different kinds of rails. And I would say this probably supports that thesis, because you're seeing case law, cases getting settled, cases getting litigated, and you'll see the establishment of precedent that other courts can follow as some of these cases work their way through the system. So it seems like the system is working. It's slow. It's ugly. It's not moving at the speed of, crypto, that's for sure. But I think this will let people gain some more clarity over time as more of these cases work their way through.
Specifically on the SEC front, does this, take the wind out of their sails with respect to this regulation by enforcement dynamic that we've seen play out the last few years?
I don't think so at all. I think, as I just sort of intimated, I believe this is actually this is a mark in favor of setting law via court cases and not having to come through with entirely new regulation or starting a new agency like Coinbase wishes would happen or something like that. So I think you litigate these cases, and apply existing law. And I think the system will kind of just sort it out. That's what I think will happen. No judgment either way. It's just what I expect to happen.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today, but we will be back again tomorrow. So we'll see you then.